Well, for more on this story, we can speak now live with someone who's long been showing his support to Sentsov. Jonathan Little, the Franco-American novelist and journalist, joins us now from Barcelona. Thank you for being with us here on France 24. You, of course, have made your point loud and clear in the press recently. But what is your message this Tuesday to the government in Russia?
Well, I think the first most important point is to make it very clear that Oleg Sentsov is innocent of the charges he's accused of. The case is completely fabricated. The confessions were extorted under torture, and the judges refused to consider the fact that the accused claimed in court that they had been tortured. The second point is that Oleg is not only on hunger strike for himself. He's on hunger strike for the entirety of the Ukrainian political prisoners in Russia, about 70 people. So it's a case that goes much further than his own personal case. And while, of course, I support all the efforts of President Macron and Chancellor Merkel to free Oleg, it is important to remember that there are many, 69 or 70 other prisoners behind him, and that just if they do succeed in obtaining his freedom, it's not enough to just stop there. It's the entirety of these prisoners who are basically been imprisoned for their opinions, for the fact that they contested the Russian annexation of Crimea, the Russian invasion of eastern Ukraine, and that's why they are in jail, and not for concrete acts of terrorism or other so-called charges.
And you mentioned there the efforts that Western governments, including France, have already done to try and press President Putin to secure this release. What, if anything, more can be done?
At this stage, I think very little. I'm appalled by the silence of the American government, but of course with the current president, that's not extremely surprising, given his very weird love affair for Vladimir Putin. The British, curiously, have also been incredibly silent. I actually published an op-ed piece in The Guardian in the hope of mobilizing some support in the UK. And you would think that with what happened in Salisbury, with the Novichok attack, that the UK government would be more sensitive about a case such as this. But the UK government, probably because they have other problems with Brexit, have been completely unconcerned with the case of Sentsov. So the governments that have been really on the front line have been the French and the Germans at this point. We hope, obviously, that the pressure that they can apply on Putin will convince him to finally relent and release Sentsov, but it's far from certain.
Now, we're hearing on the newswires here in Paris that from the family of Oleg Sentsov that his condition is deteriorating in hospital. He's now in intensive care. Do you have any contact with the family? Do you have any update to share about his condition?
I don't have direct contact with the family. I have contact with Russian journalists and human rights defenders who have visited him. It's quite tricky because everything, of course, goes according to the very Byzantine procedures of the Russian prison service. Sentsov prepared his hunger strike very carefully. He thought about it months ahead of time. He timed it very specifically so that it would become critical during the World Cup, hoping to attract international attention. And many of us did try to mobilize during the World Cup, but obviously this got drowned out by the sort of glory of football thing. He is taking glucose and food supplements so he can last much longer than, other hunger strikers in the past that took nothing. He is trying to avoid being force-fed, which is very important for him. But obviously at some point, his organs will just give up and he will die. So the solution is not found fairly rapidly. As you said earlier in the report, he is refusing to ask for grace, because presidential pardon, because he doesn't feel guilty of anything, so why should he ask for a pardon? Because he's not guilty. Only guilty people ask for a pardon. He's also, as I said, his struggle involves many, many other prisoners. So any solution for saving his life will have to involve a much broader picture than just sort of getting him out of Russia.
Okay, Jonathan Little there, the Franco-American novelist and journalist in Barcelona. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24.